Welcome to the Blast Report podcast. This is Evan Thibaud.
And this is Pedro Pereira.
We want to welcome you here. This is our first time doing a little mini episode, and we're in Savannah. This is our third time doing a recording. We started, it was last year at ISEE in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And then we did recordings in IFE as well in Dublin.
Yeah, October.
And so it's pretty nice. Each year now we get an Airbnb off site and we set up a little pop-up studio for this kind of event and invite people over, and you're off in the background kind of being the manager, making sure the mics are working and everyone's in the right position and whatnot. But it's been pretty awesome having you on board. I'm glad we convinced you to do this.
I'm glad too. It's been a tradition. It's nice. Every time we prepare ourselves for an ISEE, we take in consideration our accommodation, so we can have like a place so we can record some episodes. It all started in San Antonio. I believe the first show we recorded the episode was with Tom Palangio, and then lots of them we just made some more. Some of them are online. Some of the conversations we record and we produce over the year.
Most of the ones with our co-host Paul Sturck,
yeah.
they're online, just him and I. And then we've even done some in hotel lobbies with Mick Fritz and Mike Balance, even while we were on the job site.
yeah, and or anywhere we could, like in IFE Dublin, we did with Bill Adamson. And on the hotel room too. It's always nice. The magic of doing things in person is completely different, and we are just learning while we go. So this is the second year.
Yeah, year 2.
So we basically completed a year, a little bit more of the project. And let me now today you are going mostly to be interviewed. So you are the hosts and you interview people. So I'm going to ask you why you decided to start this project.
Well, I guess when I was a student, we were welcomed by certain members, some older guys in the industry, and they welcomed us and hung out with us and told us lots of stories, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Paul Sturck, the legend himself, he's always telling stories, and you can sit back and have a beer with him. So I kind of got the idea that we should record some of these things like a podcast. A podcast was a new hit thing. Everyone talks about having a podcast, and we thought about it. We just kind of sat on the idea, and the next year at the emerging professionals section, we talked about having another one. And still, no one really pulled the trigger. We didn't really talk about it. Then I floated the idea to Paul Sturck, and he was like, "Yeah, that kind of sounds interesting. I got some knee surgeries I got to work on, and I'm not retired yet. But if I retire, maybe I'll be interested." And then he retired, all healed up, and I was like, and then that's when kind of we became friends, and you started BlastThink, and And I kind of floated the idea to you, and you're like, "Yeah, I think this is something we can do. You have the resources and the knowledge, editing and producing and marketing these things, and which I have no understanding of how to do." But and then I told Paul, I was like, "We're doing this, Paul. Do you want to be the co-host?" And he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I was like, "Oh, nice." So it's kind of how it started, and it's just an idea to make it an online museum of the people who make up this industry. Not necessarily what their publications were and all that, the things you can read, but who are the people that I find or we find so interesting who have been in this industry for many years and who've got good stories and bad stories, and what's their human experience in the explosives industry. Let's capture this, because it's just, we don't want it to retire and go away just like what's happening. And there's so much change in the industry. It's cool to actually understand the change.
What's in it for you? Like, what you gain from it? What's your benefit? What value you see on this project?
So far, it's been pretty awesome. I think that one value for me is that I'm getting one-on-one time, and I'm able to ask the questions I want to ask to some people that maybe I've looked up to, or some people that I haven't met yet, who other people suggest I should meet. You know, it's pretty difficult to find an hour of somebody's time at a conference or something, and just in a day, especially someone maybe they don't even know. So that's a huge benefit, is I'm actually getting time to sit down and have very, I think, sometimes detailed and in-depth conversations with people. That is great, and I get to ask them hard questions. Other benefits, some of these stories are just fucking awesome, you know, and I get to hear the stories, and they haven't thought about these stories in a long time. So that's kind of a benefit to me. I love listening to hear some good stories.
Yeah, the same. We've been doing this project, and for people that don't know, like we don't feature episodes per, I don't know, like advertisements in terms of, yeah, we should make an episode about this, and we don't work that way. That's not our model. This has not been a business, but we are now accepting and also wanting to be to small advertisements during the podcast, but not more than that. That's our vision, right? Yeah. And but yeah, we have been we see value on this project because we put ourselves out there. We are doing something that doesn't
nobody's doing
it, and it's very, we can see how people enjoy sharing their time with us, sharing their story, and we can see they feel appreciated, and that's a very good feeling to have. But now, let me ask you, this is what we get from this, but what do you think that the industry or the people that share the stories, and also the people that might listen, what kind of value they might see on this project?
Well, we have 1,600 subscribers. We're in the top 10 podcasts of 100 people, and we're the #1 podcast of like 30 people. So, you know, for an industry our size, that's great. You know, for 1 year, there's a lot of people who still haven't even heard of us, which is fine. Like you said, we're not really making money off this thing. It's not, but we have decided that to make this sustainable, we should start accepting sponsorship money for episodes. Like if you want an episode with someone who you've had as a mentor, and we want us to interview them, then we would sponsor an episode with that person. I think that's kind of a good thing. But the way the industry gets to benefit for it is that this is becoming a thing. It's been a thing for a year now, and people can have a source to hear something in the explosives industry. You know, I mean, there's lots of wonderful things on LinkedIn of people posting blast videos and conversations that people have on threads. There's many different magazines and forums, the Blast On forum and the ISEE journal. There's lots of different references, but this is something you can listen to while you're on the way to the blast pattern, or you're waiting for clearances, or you know, you just left the magazine, you're going somewhere. So I think it's just nice that people get to hear stories. So you have the young people, like some students, our listeners. We have some young members who, you know, they've been in the industry 10 years, less than 10 years. And then quite a bit of our followers are actually the people we didn't think who are going to be our listeners. And they're the ones who are either past people who've been interviewed, or retirees or semi-retired people who know a lot of the people that we've interviewed. They're friends with them. So they're sitting here. They've worked with some of the guys that we've interviewed for 10 years, or they worked with them 20 years ago at a company that no longer exists, and they get to hear these stories, and they hear the names of people they worked with, and they hear the names of companies they also used to work with, or they liked or they didn't like, you know. And so I think that's actually been one of the biggest benefits, I think, for the industry, is they've been able to reconnect and hear stories and names of people and jog to memory and, you know, have some smiles. I think that's been the best thing.
Yeah, one thing that I really benefit and understand that we really immerse on that is basically these kind of stories or this kind of knowledge. It's something that you will not read on a textbook. It's not that you're going to attend on a on a webinar or a course, and basically those sometimes are just funny stories, but most of them are related to real issues, and like everybody was speaking about soft skills and stuff, but really that's all that matters is relationship in the industry, people, how they respond in difficult situations or whatever, just these kind of stories that we will hear on a bar from the old folks in the industry that most of the people usually don't have to experience nowadays. Our kind of work, blasting industry, blasting operations are usually anywhere in the world, but in the city centers, dispersed in the world. And being on an ISEE conference every year is a very good investment on our time. But then, not only to attend the conferences, the speeches, the workshops, and the trade show, but mostly being out there listening to these people's stories, and we kind of amplify that basically. Mm-hmm. I believe that's one thing that's huge.
Yeah, I very vividly remember an episode. I think it was the first episode we did with Paul Sturck, and it was and just solidified another reason why we're doing this. And he just said, yeah, that was, and that was the first time I saw somebody die, and then he just kept talking, and I remember just being like, damn, did he just say that? Like, because some of these stories are soft skills, some of these stories are funny stories, and other ones are hard lessons that need to be, unfortunately might get passed down as an MSHA fatalogram, and people need to know that like he said, all those rules written with explosives, those are written in blood. Those rules stand there because someone screwed up or something happened, and those kind of stories also need to be shared. And oftentimes you don't always see that in a presentation, or so while we have feel good stories and funny stories, we also have some of the tough things that people talk about. And we're not trying to like prod the iron or I don't know, but there's other things that we talk about that maybe the industry isn't really wanting to see on an Instagram post or something, some true stories, right?
So 2024 now here in Savannah, Georgia, for the 50th anniversary of ISEE. What are your expectations?
Well, we've got officially 12 interviews already lined up, scheduled, and that's unbelievable. And we've managed to maneuver the interviews in time slots in between some of the really good papers, and the events like the emerging professionals and the industry connection, and some of the international luncheon. And we've got some, now I've kind of taken a tangent here, but we've done Father's Day episodes where we've interviewed a father-son pair.
Valentine's
Day episodes with Paul and Jill, and their cohesion together and their success, and even tried to do some Mother's Day, because there's two mother-daughter blaster pairs that I know of, and so we're trying to set that up. But yeah, so it's just wonderful. A lot more people are listening. A lot more people know about the podcast. And they're mentioning names to us. I mean, the list of names I have is close to 50 names. 12 we locked in during the conference, and a very large number of people, unfortunately, aren't making it this year to the conference for health reasons or something. But we'll try to get them online if we can. Yeah.
So what's I believe it's the first podcast you run, right?
No, it's the first podcast I ever ran, but I think one of the reasons why I really pulled the trigger is a friend of mine asked me to be on a podcast called Adventuring for Mere Mortals. And it's a geologist, and he's just a real cool guy. And he started his podcast. Shout out to Adventuring for Mere Mortals, Trevor Bowman. But he asked me to be on the show where it's made to just help people get introduced to a new sport that they might not be into. So if you don't know anything about road biking or mountain biking or whitewater rafting, someone comes on the show and just talks a little bit about it, which is really cool, to just break the steps, talk a little bit, and it gave people an example to get together and have conversation. So I think that I had such a great experience on that I was like, oh man, I should do this too for the Explosive Society. So then that's when we just started this. And
you are known as the story Thibaud. You are a story man. So but my question is, so you were invited to be interviewed in this podcast, but this is the first podcast project that you run, that you're producing. So tell us little bit more, because you didn't know how to do it. We neither. It's our first project of a podcast. So let's dive deep into what you learn. How is your process like, or what time does this takes out of your week, for example?
Well, that's a good question. It's pretty interesting because I try to find out some names of people who we should interview, and then try to find their phone number through the directory. If that's not an old phone number, I'm calling some random person. But we try to get a hold of somebody if they call me back, and lock down a time. It's great, and then we'll get to interview. It's about an hour-long interview, hour-and-a-half-long interview, and we break that up into a few episodes. I'll have to go. So the time frame is actually the difficult part, is re-listening to the whole interview, not hating the sound of your own voice. That's definitely part of it. And then trying to edit that and give you guys who produce it, you and your team, Luis and everybody at BlastThink, the time frames of what to edit and what parts of the conversation kind of fit into one episode and not the other, and then come up with a title for it, and then get photos of them and have your team come up with a graphic. So then you guys then send me that with the edits, and I have to re-listen to it again. So each interview is at least 3 hours of re-listening to it again to look for the next edits, and see if there's something we said that we probably shouldn't have said, cut that out. Or for the most part, I think so far I've only edited out one thing that somebody said. That probably it's a damn good thing that we edited it out. It's just, but for the most part, this is as free speech as you could say. This is, we're not trying to piss anybody off here, but we want everyone to just speak their mind, and talk.
We don't have many strict rules in it. We try to make, in terms of subject, we try to split episodes in terms of a subject that it's interesting, because sometimes in this conversation, hour long, depending on how it flows, you could touch 3 major different topics. So we try to do that, but we don't have a rule on the time of the episode, so we're pretty flexible and free on the process. But yeah, it takes a lot of process. So that's what I wanted also you to share, because for the people listening to this to understand the team behind, the time consumption of this. You at the end of an episode, when it's out there on Spotify and the other platforms, you probably don't even press play, because you already
I've listened to it 3 times, maybe 4 times. Yeah, and I'm so happy that it's released, and I'm like, here it is. But I do love when people comment and share it, and then they say, oh, I remember this. Now, there's a lot of people who don't comment. We can see, a lot of people do listen, and a lot of people don't necessarily feel like commenting or engaging and stuff. It does help me when people do comment, but even if they don't, it's no big deal. But it does help when they like and share it and stuff like that, because then it adds to the whole. It makes that part fun.
It helps.
It makes it fun. Yeah.
We at BlastThink, we work on communication marketing. Social media is a big chunk of it, and we see this is a trend in terms of these projects, work related, and in our industry. Usually people don't have much energy or time to engage, to comment and stuff. But for the people that really, it can be 5 listeners to this episode, but if those 5 listeners they really enjoyed this and they want to keep more engaging, is a very important part of the process. So we invite you to do this and share with your colleagues, because this is important.
Yeah, I mean, and what you guys do on the back end, producing it, making sure that it's not just on YouTube. It's, a lot of our listeners are Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so that other platforms, I've had quite a few people tell me that they actually just use it on YouTube. So there's so much like back end work when it comes to the production that I'm impressed about, that I'm like, I don't know how you guys do that, but
we make a good team, right?
Yeah, all power to you. You know, I know you guys have patience with me sometimes, so I appreciate that. But yeah, it's pretty interesting when it comes to, you know, oh, you guys have a podcast. Like, I don't really market the podcast very much. I feel like it's for the people who want to listen, and it's great. You know, I think that I have seen some people, we've seen people get emotional. We've seen lots of laughs. We've had people thank us very much for having them on. We've had people thank us for interviewing a certain person who was their mentor or someone they worked with. So
it has never been a product. It's something that we obviously we invest a lot of our resources, time and money on this project. This is not a product, and will never be, actually, because it's not your priority. It's not your, you have a company yourself.
Yeah, I mean, we have our, you know, you have your job, I have my job. We absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about your job, because in this episode we always hear you at your interviews, Evan Thibaud, as a host, but let us know a little bit outside the Blast Report, what is that you do in this industry?
So I'm mainly an explosives consultant, and I've focused my career on bringing innovation to the industry. So helping facilitate those who create technology with those who are in the field using it. Being able to communicate with, you know, engineers, and then also being able to be with my steel toes on the pattern, you know, and making sure that if this is going to work for a blaster, that the blasters are heard to the creators, right? And so as new technologies and innovations are introduced into the market, there are benefits to a new technology, but they might not understand that this certain application, it won't work in this application, or it does work in a certain application. It just needs to, the blaster might just need to use it differently, or so it's just a really nice communication career that I have. Is just like every day is an experiment, and that's what I do. So I work with cryogenics to make a drill bit last twice as long. I work with the team at OPIT Blast with the OPIT Dev, making sure, you know, there's a very easy way to measure borehole deviation.
So as a distributor?
Yeah, just as a distributor, you know, and I work as a consultant on, you know, making sure electronic detonators are implemented properly. I've done blast design projects for civil project, misfire management, lots of different things as an explosives consultant. But, you know, my real joy is seeing early adopters and as people are testing things, and how does that work out. So that's kind of my background, you know, but the podcast is something that's, like you said, it's a background. It's not a priority. It's just something that I'm passionate about, because the people in this industry are the reason why I decided to bust ass in college and stay in this industry. I'm not, you know, I think it was Dan Sturck, I believe he's like the 21st generation miner in his family. Like, that's amazing, right? I'm first generation miner. Like, my dad from Park City, Utah, you know, he loves life, and he's skiing all the time, you know, and he knew about mining because they'd come into the bar that he owned, you know. His bar actually had a back entrance to one of the mines. When he knocked down a wall to renovate the bar in Park City, he found all the little silver dollar quarters from the mine. And but I'm first generation miner, and coming into this industry and meeting so many cool people and hearing all those stories, it kind of made me want to start the podcast. So that's kind of why it's like, this isn't, you know, you can't run a career off a podcast unless you're Joe Rogan or something, but I'm no Joe Rogan.
We are in a very niche industry, and our goal will never be and cannot be volume, because it's more focused on what you bring as a niche, because not everybody, but most of the people nowadays enjoy podcasts, general humorist, information generalistic, but when you see that something that you hear about your industry that will never hear anywhere else besides your work environment, you're talking about the pattern, the bench, the hard hat, the detonators, the boosters, everything. And I really see the value of listening to that, not in a boring way, technical way, but to bring this different side, this different perspective.
We thought about, there's other topics that we could have on the podcast. Right now, we've really looked at like the origin stories of people who we've interviewed. Where they're from, why are they in the industry, what are some motivations that kept them. But there's other things like near misses, right? We could go down that topics, past publications. We could actually talk and interview people on some of their publications, projects, unique case studies that they've worked on. There's a lot of other things that we could do on top of that if we decide that, we're getting bored with this or something, or people want to listen to something else. But I think for the most part, people have enjoyed the human aspect.
Yeah.
And I kind of hit that nail on the head a few times. So maybe we'll change it up. And if we keep getting more constructive criticism, which is good from our listeners, we want to hear what people like and what they don't like, because we see that, we know that people are listening, and we see that. And a few people comment to us personally, like later on or in a phone call. I've had quite a few people say, oh yeah, I heard that episode the other day, but I think we're just going to keep doing it this way for now and see how it plays out,
Just getting back to what you're saying about being the first generation miner. I'm a first generation miner, explosive engineer myself. And I really see that people like with our background or lack of background, family background, we really value on having these experiences, because if you simply are born in a family of these people, these traditions, you'll be more used to hear about this outside your work environment. This is your like kind of runs in your blood.
Mm-hmm.
But so we don't have that, and opening this platform, it allows us to be in contact with that different perspective.
True.
And not only in our work environment. And that I think is something that for us, both of us that run independently our business, we are bringing different approaches to this industry as well. This is something that it really benefits us on this aspect. So,
yeah, I think we've been able. This is kind of a cool little episode, because this is actually the first time we've kind of shared a little bit about us.
A funny story that I want to share quickly is that we were in Denver, Colorado. I was working for OP Blast. I believe that was we met that same week for the first time. And a funny thing, like with my old boss and friend now, Francisco. Later from Porto, from OP Blast, we had a WhatsApp group that we were sharing some interesting
you would bring this
ideas
up.
and like, hey, let's meet at this bar or whatever. And with some drinks, he had like a very inspirational speech, very quick, saying like, you see, we were all like youngsters there, 35 less. And then he said, like in 15 years, we'll be running this thing. So the WhatsApp name of the group was the ISEE 2035. So we are 11 years, 11 years from now. What is that you can foresee in 11 years for the industry?
Oh man, yeah, it's a pretty cool WhatsApp group. It's mainly just photos of us letting everyone know where we're at. But what do I see in 2035
in the industry? What people like we and the tendency of the industry, what we could bring to the industry.
I think that that's a great question. It's very hard to predict. I mean, I think that there is going to be a bigger push on regulation in the United States. I think that there are going to be technologies that are massive disruptors. I have a feeling there's going to be more projects than we can handle.
Short of labor, too.
Short of labor. I think it's going to be I hope it's going to be a very cohesive group. the relationship that Rolla has with Kentucky, with South Dakota School of Mines, with New Mexico, with the few people coming out of Pennsylvania, Colorado. There's a lot of camaraderie and good competition, like mucking team kind of thing. So I think that our generations are strong in friendship, for the most part. And so it's very cohesive in projects, working together. And we're a generation that is open to new technology and constantly being bombarded with new technology, and we're grasping it. And yet we're still lucky enough to be in the industry and working with some older guys where picking up the stemming shovel is fucking important. So we're in a good middle ground to where some people only stare at a computer for a living and they just do some long range mine planning. And that's fine. If that's what they want to do, let them do it. I have no idea if AI is going to take that job in the future. Just optimize the pit right there, run all the calculations itself based off the parameters. But it's going to be hard to replace a blaster and a blast consultant, all in one. I mean, you might have automatic drills, and maybe in a high grade metal mine in high temperatures, when they got the money, they're going to be able to replace everybody down there. But I mean, for the most part, construction, civil, a lot of projects, I believe, are still going to be a blaster, and having the ability at our age group in 2035 and in the future, there's going to be a lot of technology that's going to assist us. And I think our eyes are open and we're receptive to that technology, but we also still have the fundamentals of like educators like Paul Wurzy and other people who, taught you why these equations exist, and, what is true burden spacing, and why are you're on the pattern and you're seeing it, and you're dipping the hole and watching the tape's not coming up. There's a void in that rock. You better shut off the truck. I think it's going to be hard to replace that with technology. There's still going to be humans. So I think that that's where we're going in the industry. So there's going to be cohesion, and we're going to be very successful, I think.
And one thing, on my side, being from Portugal and looking at the international aspect, I really believe that it's been exponential, the adoption of technologies, but a lot of different geographies in the world still are very reluctant, and due to political or economic situations. But I can see we have the opportunity to have a very cohesive and open sharing of knowledge, and I really see that as thriving in any time that you see things like patents or decentralization, open source software. So this I believe that we'll be seeing. I don't know what will be the shift, but we will be a shift on the way that we work in more efficient and in terms of resources. Like, we know that we came from an industry that people target us as responsible for these problems that we're facing as a generation, but we are the ones that are dealing it in a more proximity way, because we are young, and we have the mission. I believe that we have the mission to not renounce to this industry, because this industry is not to blame in terms of the problems, but we have the right to do something.
Responsibility.
The responsibility to implement some changes in terms of technology, in terms of how we cooperate, and basically it all comes down to managing the resources that our generation has.
Yeah, I mean, mining's not going away.
No.
So we're doing better. We know we're doing better. And I always thought it was interesting. Every time I think I bring up a subject to a group of blasters or explosives engineers or drillers, that something needs to change, or so people are very open to doing things a better way. And even when you think someone's old school, they might be the first person to pick something up. I love Mick Fritz's story that we did in one of these episodes of when he brought a camcorder to a blast and recorded a blast, you know, and what the hell is that thing? And he hiked this whole old school camcorder that was massive and to videotape the whole blast, and not even high speed, you know. It's pretty cool, you know. So there's just so many people, and Mick to this day, he's still pushing innovation. You know, he retired. He shot his last shot. I got a video of him shooting his last shot. It was awesome. I was on a project with him and he shot his last shot, and he's still on the pattern there, talking about innovation and what we're going to do in 15 years.
Yeah. Funny
cool.
Story. We were in Dublin for the ISEE last year, and we would have a trip around walking tour on a city. And when we were passing through a park, there was a small manifestation, you know, like with some boards saying no explosives, protect the environment, something like that. I don't know if they knew that we were having the ISEE there at that week, at those days, and if it was just a strange coincidence or if it was targeted. But just to make a stand on, like, we as explosives engineers, we first of all we care about health, and then in terms of sustainability, we develop softwares to calculate to the minimum percentage of efficiency. We really care about that, and things that people don't understand outside this industry is that this is a very more sustainable operation than old ways of mining. And as you said, mining is not going anywhere. Agriculture and extraction of mineral resources are the base, the foundation of our society and the way that our civilization as well. And so having this, telling people that they should have a second thought on what we do, and that we are very compromised. We are very on board on what we
on adapting.
Yeah.
Now, didn't you say there was someone at that who saw the protesters and went up and talked to them?
Yes.
Who was that?
I don't remember, but
I think you said it was Chuck Dowdy.
Yeah, it was Chuck. Yeah. Exactly.
But we're gonna have him on the guest as a show. But yeah, I mean, you said you were impressed because you never met him, and you were just taking the tour with the group, and he's a professor. Like,
that's a nice attitude towards when we face that. So I really hope, I'm very optimistic to 2035, to be honest.
Nice.
And
me too.
It was so nice to have this conversation with you. Like, you usually are the one making the questions. I'm usually editing with my team at BlastThink, so it was nice to do this.
Yeah, this is fun. Good idea.
I'm very grateful to be a part of this project and to be here every year at ISEE. And I'm hopeful and I'm excited for this week and for the episodes that we are going to record. So thanks for having.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Couldn't do it without you and your team. Cheers.
Cheers, man.
And thank you to all our listeners. And like we said, if you know more people that we should interview, send them our way. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Blast Report podcast. I want to thank the team at BlastThink for producing this show, and please follow along for more episodes in the future, and share this podcast with your colleagues so we can continue to honor our industry and the people in it. Be safe and have a blast.